Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 421, written by angeryreaxonly, shifting realities as easily as turning a page in a book. I moved recently, and while packing my belongings, I went through a box of old stuff that hadn't been opened in probably 15 years. One of the items inside this box was an old book that I've read a dozen times when I was younger. Let me tell you about this book. When I was in 8th grade, 1998 to 1999, school year, our teacher assigned us this book to read. Each of us were given a 3-ring binder filled with the photocopies of each page of the book, rather than the book itself. Being the little nerd I was, I asked why we were given copies like this, and wasn't it against copyright laws? The teacher said she had permission to do this, and she had contracted the publisher, and the book was out of print. After we were done reading it, we had to turn in the 3-ring binders so that the teacher could use them again the following school year. I loved that book. I was borderline obsessed with that book. I talked about it non-stop. I wanted to read it again and again, but couldn't since I had to give it back to the teacher. We had just gotten dial-up internet, and we had a home computer and a printer that both my mom and I were learning how to use. Back in the early days of the internet, everyone seemed to be against buying things online. You remember that? I remember hearing a lot about how dangerous it would be to type in your credit card information because it could easily be stolen by hackers on the internet. So one day, when I found a printed out receipt for an online purchase my mom had made, it obviously caught my attention. I was rifling through the stack of my parents' documents like mail and bills and stuff like that when I found the receipt. I was a curious, annoying, nerdy kid who did things like this all the time. My mom had found my special book on the internet and ordered it for me for Christmas. She bought it off a website that was just starting to become well known at the time, mainly for books as I recall, a little place called Amazon.com. I remember thinking to myself how the name reminded me of the wild, dangerous Amazon rainforest, and how wildly dangerous it was to put your credit card information out there on the internet. Nevertheless, I was so excited that I would have my own copy of my favorite book, finally. I'm not sure if this was Christmas 98 or Christmas 99, but sure enough, it was under the tree and it was my favorite present that year. I read it cover to cover over and over for a couple of years. Finally, when I had my fill, I put it on my bookshelf with my other books, where it stayed until I packed my things and moved out of my parents' house. At some point, while it was on the bookshelf, my mom put that receipt folded up inside the book, and I noticed this before I packed it into the moving box. It stayed in that box on a shelf in the basement for all these years. Fast forward to present time. I'm packing and moving my belongings. I open the box, find the book, thought about the receipt. I wanted to show it to my boyfriend to make a joke about how my boomer mom used Amazon before it was even cool. So I open up the book, pull out the folded receipt, open it up to look at it, but it's not from Amazon. It's from barnesandnobles.com. Reality shifted, right? That's the only explanation. I have such clear, specific memories of this receipt being from Amazon. I just don't even know what's real anymore. Case file number 422, written by Desperate Ad, 1071. When the universe decides to screw up your student art project. 10 days ago, I went shopping for some classroom supplies, including patterned craft paper for my students' art projects. I'd look online and decided to go to a Walmart out of town, which had everything I needed. When I got to the store, I found the paper I wanted, but was struck by another pad of paper made by the same company. The patterns were gorgeous, and I'd never seen them before. I figured they weren't sold at my local Walmart. After comparing the two, I decided to buy the paper I'd just discovered rather than the pad I'd originally planned on. I also bought a rectangular wooden crate and decided to use it in place of bags at self-checkout. When I checked out, I put the paper in last, but couldn't fit it against the side of the crate unless I curved the bottom. The crate had triangular reinforcements in the corners, which reduced the interior space on the sides. I didn't want to bend my pretty paper, so I took my other items out and carefully repacked the crate with the paper in the middle. My memories of this are very clear and critically important. When I got home, I left the crate in my trunk until Monday morning, when I brought it into my classroom and began my usual activities. At some point, I realized I didn't have the pad of paper, but I wasn't alarmed. I didn't need it until later in the week and figured it had somehow fallen out of my trunk. But the paper was not in my trunk or anywhere else in the car. Did I bring it in the house and forget that I did? That seemed like the only explanation. I looked around my house that night, no sign of the paper. I was baffled, but convinced I must have put it somewhere and would find it eventually. For art that week, I changed my plans and used what I had on hand. 1 week later, I'd rechecked the car and house several times and the paper was still missing. I still thought I'd misplaced it and was annoyed with myself because I wanted to use the paper in a project. I decided to buy it again. That's when things got really weird. I looked online to see if Walmart had the paper in stock. I'd bought the only one left on the shelf, but couldn't find those patterns anywhere. I searched other stores, searched paper made by other companies, and even looked on Etsy for older stuff. No luck. Then the final blow. I pulled out my receipt, hoping to find a product number. There is no record of my buying any paper. I am hyper-conscientious when using self-checkout, and I wouldn't pack an item until I heard the scanner beep. I'm always afraid I'll be accused of shoplifting, and mindful of the fact that the cameras are recording. In summary, I bought a pad of paper which I now can't find anywhere on the internet. The paper disappeared from the crate I'd carefully packed it in, and the purchase isn't listed on my receipt. This bothered me so much that I measured the crate's interior to see if I was consistent with my recollections. It was. The pad of paper was 12 inches square. The middle of the crate is 13 inches wide, but the sides are only 11 inches wide due to the corner reinforcements. I couldn't fit the pad on the side without carving it, but could easily fit it in the middle, just as I remembered. I'm stumped. Case file number 423, written by Desperate Ad, 1071. When the universe says Reparo on your necklace. Some people have suggested that glitches are happening more often. That's been true in my life. In the last 4 to 5 months, I've had 3 baffling glitches. Here's the latest. A few years ago, I bought a necklace in New Orleans. It has an elaborate pendant and beads intertwined in a delicate chain. Early last year, the chain broke in the middle and I couldn't fix it. I was annoyed because I'd only worn it about 10 times and it wasn't cheap. I boxed up the necklace and put it in the back of a long, narrow closet, planning to take it to the jeweler someday. Then the event that shall not be named hit, and I forgot about it. Recently I thought I'd like to wear the necklace and decided to have it fixed. I dug it out from the back of the closet and it wasn't broken. The piece was perfectly intact, as though nothing ever happened. This is mystifying. No one goes in that closet but me. My husband is disabled and can't even open the door, and we've had few visitors over since the world event started. I'm also embarrassed to admit that the closet is a mess. There's no way someone snuck in, searched through the closet, found the necklace, took it to the jeweler for repair, during the event no less, and secretly returned it to the closet. Besides, why would anyone do that, even if they could somehow pull it off? I never mentioned the broken necklace to anyone and have no explanation for what happened. Case notes, file number 423. Right, so we have crossover events where people transition between parallel universes, then we have disappearing object phenomena, where people lose items and then usually they come back but not always, although all these objects and people, notable to say, are still bound to Earth's gravity, so whatever they're doing, they're still here in a sense. So that would explain why Earth is still relevant in the picture, even though we can't see them. It's like they phase out of the electromagnetic spectrum, kind of like neutrinos can just pass through everything, but they are still affected by gravity. It's just that they're moving so fast, it's not really relevant at the scale of Earth, so they just zip right through. And then for your necklace, now we have a new one, something just being repaired, mystifyingly. Are we just gonna call this repairing object phenomena? I wonder, this isn't as frequent, but I have read a couple stories about this. Objects that were destroyed, or mangled, or even completely broken, suddenly reassembling themselves. Never inside, of course, it happens off-screen, but it does seem to happen, and that's pretty damn cool. Perhaps we have leprechauns that are coming in the middle of the night to repair items that have great sentimental value to us. Well, maybe not leprechauns, but something did.